Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of British English Pod with me, Lewis. And this week in class, we've been speaking all about sleep. So in this podcast, I'm going to go over and review everything that we did in class to provide you with comprehensible input, teach you lots of advanced words and phrases, and, well, answer plenty of questions. So, if you're ready, let's get started. And to begin, if you are watching this, you will see that I've got a bottle of Coke Zero in my hand because I need some caffeine and it's boiling, it's roasting, it's scorching, so I don't really fancy a cup of coffee. And I don't know why, but for me, iced coffee just isn't quite as nice. I don't really enjoy it as much. So, my fiance had the majority of this Coke yesterday and left the rest in the fridge. So, as I was opening the fridge door, I thought, oh, okay, that could be nice. I'm sure that will hit the spot. If something hits the spot, it satisfies you. It gives you everything you want in that moment. And Coke is an example of a fizzy drink. A fizzy drink is, well, a sparkling drink. And in British English slang, you can also say pop. My granddad, for example, used to always say, oh, can I have a can of pop? Maybe a Fanta or a Sprite. So he would call fizzy drinks in general pop. I guess because when you open a can or a bottle of fizzy drinks, you can hear, the popping sound of pop, 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 pop. So anyway, I'm going to have a sip of this Coke. And a sip is just a little mouthful. Well, it's good, it's cold, it's refreshing, but it's a bit flat. And it's flat because my fiance opened it yesterday. And when sparkling drinks have been left open for a while, they go flat. Like, the road, when it's not hilly, it is flat. But anyway, there I've taught you lots of advanced words and phrases already. And, well, welcome back to another podcast. And let me know, once again, where you are listening from. I am recording from Brussels once again, but in a couple of weeks, I will be traveling. Actually, no, 1 week today, by the time that this podcast is released, I will be in Krakow. And I've mentioned this on the podcast that I've been wanting to go to Poland for ages. And it just so happens that one of my mates is getting married this year. And for his stag do, his bachelor party, we're going to Krakow. So I'll be there a week today. So especially, let me know if there are any people who live in Poland or Krakow. And who knows, maybe I'll run into you. Let's see. But let's get started with the topic because, it's boiling here. It's roasting here. So we must get cracking. We've got to keep going. And as I said, we've been speaking all about sleep this week. And again, as always, if you're interested in joining my classes or downloading my application, you can check out the links in the video description to have classes with me and cover these topics every single week. But the first question is a simple one. It is, how well do you sleep? Do you sleep well or not? In my case, sometimes I sleep well, but not always. Because if I've done a lot of exercise and I've been working out quite a lot and I've had a busy day, then I usually sleep like a baby. But even still, if there is a slight sound or slight noise, then it'll wake me up. And when I am awoken, it's hard for me to get back to sleep, to return to sleep. So that's one of my issues, and it is essentially because I am a very light sleeper. I can fall asleep relatively quickly, but then if I hear a sound or a noise, whoa, I'm a really light sleeper and things wake me up very quickly. So that's one of the downsides, let's say, about the way that I sleep. What about you? Are you a good sleeper or not? How well do you normally sleep? Because sometimes I'm jealous of my fiance because she sleeps like a baby and she doesn't snore or anything like that, which is amazing. But yeah, she could sleep for hours and hours and hours. If it were up to her, she would sleep in until 10 o'clock or 11 o'clock every day. And for me, I just can't do that anymore. Especially in summer when you see that it's a sunny, bright day. When I open my eyes in the morning, I think, it's a beautiful day. I need to get up, have a coffee, and go out to make the most of the day. My fiance will also do that, but she will sleep like a log, so she won't wake up until much later than me. Now let's continue with some other questions, because here we have 6 different questions, and I'm going to choose the ones that I want to answer. So number 1, how many hours do you usually sleep each night? How many hours do you usually sleep each night? I would say that on average, I sleep about 7 hours. I try to have 8 hours sleep, but it's difficult because I'll often fall asleep around midnight. I try to be asleep by 11:30, but it might take me a while to fall asleep. So I'd say between 11:30 and 12 is when I would usually fall asleep. And then the next morning, most days I wake up at 7:30. So then it gives me 7 to 8 hours sleep, which is pretty good most of the time, I think. Hopefully it will stay that way. And now, even at the weekend, it's hard for me to sleep a lot more than that. When I was younger, at the weekend, I could sleep maybe 10 hours. Oh, those were the days, the good old days. But nowadays, I think I've lost the ability, the talent, or the habit to be able to sleep for so long. I guess it happens as you get older. Now, number 2, are you a light sleeper or a heavy sleeper? Are you a light sleeper or a heavy sleeper? Well, as I mentioned just a few minutes ago, I'm much more of a light sleeper than I am a heavy sleeper because when I hear a sound, it wakes me up immediately. And then, as I said, sometimes it's hard to fall back to sleep. And I don't understand how certain people can be such heavy sleepers. I'm going to give you an example because when I was at school and university, you'd always have some friends, maybe when you're in the car together or you're on the train together, who would nod off. They would doze off. This means to fall asleep. And then we might play pranks on them and we might, tease them a little bit and get a pen out and write something on their forehead or on their cheeks. And whilst we were doing this, some people, they still wouldn't wake up. And it blows my mind how someone can be such a heavy sleeper that even when you're being touched and people are drawing something on your face, that they still don't wake up. I wish I could be such a heavy sleeper, but I'm not, unfortunately. But at least that means that if anybody is wanting to play pranks on me, I'm alert. So you can't catch me. Okay, number 3, I've already answered, which is what time do you normally go to bed? Which on a weeknight is about 11:30. And I try to be asleep before midnight. At the weekend, it might be a little bit later, but usually not too much later. I don't like staying up too late anymore because then I feel like the next day is a bit of a waste. I'm sure you know what I mean. Number 4, do you ever take naps during the day? And a nap, of course, is a siesta. And do I ever take naps during the day? Well, not really. I don't really like taking naps or having a nap because in my experience, it takes me a long time to fall asleep. And then the perfect idea of a nap is to only sleep for like 20 minutes. So then apparently you feel refreshed when you wake up and you can go back to work or do something else. But this doesn't work for me because one, it takes me a long time to fall asleep, so it's impossible to have a nap. And then two, I feel a bit groggy when I wake up. I feel a bit groggy. You know, I'm a bit spaced out. I don't know where I am. I don't know what time it is. I don't know what to do with my life, basically. So, the only circumstances when I would take a nap is maybe if I'm on holiday and I've had a busy morning and a big meal, then why not? You might as well have a nap whilst you're on holiday because you've got a lot of time to be able to sleep and not only have a 20-minute nap, but an hour nap. And then the other scenario when I might take a nap is if I went out the night before and I had a very, very intense night, sleeping very little, and I'm struggling, I'm knackered, I'm exhausted. Then I might tell myself, okay, Lewis, you're going to be an absolute waste man, a zombie, if you don't take a nap. So it's better to do it now, and you might feel a little bit better after having that nap. So those are the only two scenarios when I take a nap. But generally speaking, I'm not a fan. I'm not a fan of having a nap. I'd much rather just sit down on the sofa with air conditioning rather than having a nap. Question number 5. Do you think people sleep less nowadays than in the past? Do you think people sleep less nowadays than in the past? I'm not sure. Because what we tend to do is always think that, nowadays things are worse than what they used to be in the past. And civilization, our way of living, is going from bad to worse, which isn't always the case, of course. I think it's just recency bias. Because in the past, of course, there would have been people who would have slept a lot less because they were working in mills or factories, and they might have been on the night shift. So then they would sleep much worse. Of course, we can't overlook the fact that nowadays technology means that just when we're in bed before we fall asleep, we'll be scrolling up and down and watching videos on our screens. And I think that's bad for the quality of your sleep. There are lots of documents and studies and theories that back that up, that playing on your phone or watching something just before going to sleep isn't going to help you to have a good night's sleep. I think that's quite clear. But I guess there are advantages and disadvantages of our sleep quality nowadays and our sleep quality in the past. So, to sum up, I'm on the fence. I can't make up my mind if people sleep better nowadays or in the past. If I had to pick, I'd say people do probably sleep a little bit less nowadays than they used to in the past. What do you reckon? Do you agree, disagree, and why? And number 6, what things make it difficult for you to fall asleep? What things make it difficult for you to fall asleep? Well, a few things. One is doing exercise just before going to sleep. So, in particular, when I used to live in Spain, sometimes I'd play football or go to the gym very late at 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock. And then if I'm playing for an hour or an hour and a half, my body would be too stimulated, too hot, and too energized to be able to fall asleep. So I think it's clear that doing too much exercise too late in the day prevents you from falling asleep. Another one is your mind. If you're thinking too much about something, it definitely doesn't help you to fall asleep. So if there are things going on at work, with my family, or ideas that I've got that I'd like to incorporate to my business, if I'm thinking about these things in bed whilst trying to fall asleep, then it doesn't allow me to relax enough to be able to actually close my eyes and start sleeping. So those are two things. And the third thing is noise. If you've got noisy neighbors, or you've got people in the street making a lot of noise, or maybe even your flatmates or your family, they might be watching TV and they've got the volume super duper high, then it's going to prevent you from falling asleep because for most people, this background noise disturbs you. At least for me, it definitely disturbs me. Now, another little thing is snoring. Snoring, you know. Now, I'm very lucky. Very, very lucky. I'm very fortunate, and I can recognize that. And it's a shame that my fiance is never going to listen to this. She's never going to hear this, but I'm going to say it anyway. She does sleep like a baby. I think I've heard her snore maybe 3 times in my life, and we've been together for 11 years. So it would only happen if she's sick or she's got a blocked nose and maybe she's been drinking, then maybe she snores a little bit. And I used to think that I didn't snore. I used to think that I wasn't a snorer because, well, my friends had never said that I snored. I had gone camping with my mates and shared a tent with different people and realized which ones snored and which ones didn't. And we'd speak about it the next day like, oh my God, Jack, you were snoring so loudly last night. It was unbearable. So, oh, you, Jimmy, you were snoring as well. Oh, I couldn't sleep at all. I couldn't sleep a wink because of your snoring. And my mates never told me that I snored. And, well, when I was a child, I don't think I snored either. But it appears that as I've been getting older, my fiance has told me that I've started snoring more and more. Which, you know, it's not my fault. I can't do anything about it. Maybe there are some masks that I could use, but I'd look like some crazy creature from another planet if I wore one of these sleeping masks. No offense if you wear them. I will probably end up having to wear them in the future. But at the moment, my snoring isn't that bad. It's not so annoying because my fiance will complain about it a little bit. And she's like, oh, Lewis, you were snoring so much last night. So I tell her, hey, just hit me. Wake me up. Stop me snoring. And I think it only happens when I'm lying down with, you know, my back on the bed. So my face is up. Then I snore a little bit more. If I'm sleeping on my chest, so face down, then I don't think I snore. I don't think you're able to snore if you sleep like this. And usually I sleep on my side. And when I sleep on my side, I'm the most comfortable I could be. And I don't think that I snore a lot. I think it's only when I've got a cold or I haven't been sleeping a lot recently. And then I am lying down face up and that's when I snore. And I suppose it's only going to get worse. I'm only going to start snoring more and more and more. So, again, let me know about you. Do you or your partner snore? And what do you do if your partner snores? Do you just like elbow them and wake them up? Do you sleep in different beds or different rooms? I don't know. Is there a solution? Or do you just have to make do with it? Maybe you just have to make do with it and accept it. Now, let me read a quick dialogue, and there are two different slides and two different roles to this dialogue. We have Sophie and Daniel, and I'll read both of them. So, enjoy, and then we'll go over some of the advanced words and phrases. Sophie, you look exhausted today. Did you not sleep well? Daniel, not at all. I was tossing and turning all night. Sophie, oh no, what kept you awake? Daniel, I think it was stress. I had loads of things on my mind, and I just couldn't switch off. Sophie, I know that feeling. Sometimes my brain suddenly becomes super active the moment I lie down. Daniel, exactly. I checked the time every hour, which probably made things worse. Sophie, definitely. Whenever I can't sleep, I avoid looking at the clock. It only makes me anxious. Daniel, good point. I also drank coffee quite late yesterday afternoon, so that probably didn't help either. Sophie, yeah, caffeine can really mess up your sleep. Have you tried changing your bedtime routine? Daniel, not really. Usually, I just scroll through social media until I feel sleepy. Sophie, that might be part of the problem. I started reading before bed instead of using my phone, and it's helped a lot. Daniel, maybe I should try that. Do you usually sleep well? Sophie, most of the time, yes. I try to go to bed at the same time every night. Daniel, I wish I could do that, but my schedule is all over the place. Sophie, consistency really helps. Also, I stopped watching intense TV series before bed because they kept me awake. Daniel, that makes sense. Last night I watched a horror film and I think it put me on edge. Sophie, there you go. Tonight, avoid caffeine, stay off your phone, and try to relax before bed. Daniel, I'll give it a go. Hopefully, I'll get a good night's sleep. Excellent. Now, what did you think of the dialogue? Were any of these arguments or opinions relevant for you? Do you watch things that are too intense on TV that put you on edge before you go to sleep? Do you scroll through social media before you go to sleep? Or do you try to read books instead of using social media? And your sleeping pattern, your sleeping routine, is it all over the place? Completely chaotic? And are you constantly tossing and turning at night, which means moving a lot at night? Let me know. I do sometimes toss and turn at night, and I move a lot because I'm trying to find the perfect position. I'm trying to find that nice position where you've got your pillow just kind of on top of your arm and your shoulder, and then you can rest your head, and maybe you're curled up in a ball. So, yeah, I toss and turn a lot before I find that perfect position. Another question. Do you ever have sleepless nights? Do you ever have sleepless nights? And a sleepless night is a night when you don't sleep. You don't sleep a wink. And this very, very, very rarely happens to me. Because sleepless completely without sleep, I think is almost impossible. There are days when maybe I realize that I can't fall asleep, and then I start checking my phone and checking the time, and I check maybe after an hour first. So I go to bed at midnight, then at 1 o'clock, I check, and I'm like, oh, it's 1 o'clock. I still haven't slept a wink. Let's try to count sheep and really relax. Don't move. Maybe get up to go for a wee first and try to really fall asleep. 1 hour later, 2 hours later, I realize, oh no, it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I still haven't slept at all. Then it's true that I start to get a little bit stressed about it. I start to panic almost because I'm thinking about the next day and I'm thinking, oh, tomorrow's going to be a disaster. If I don't sleep at all, if I have a sleepless night, then how am I going to teach the next morning? How am I going to go out for a run? How am I going to survive? And then usually at this point, I will start to doze off. I'll start to nod off. So I never really have sleepless nights, but I do start to panic when it's been a few hours and I haven't fallen asleep yet. And I think that there is the prospect, the possibility of having a sleepless night. And that's when I think to myself, oh no, tomorrow's going to be horrible. But I don't have insomnia. I'm not a heavy sleeper, but I don't have problems that are recurring that limit my sleeping. Thank God. Thank God. Now let's go over some of these words and phrases, and we've got some phrasal verbs and some expressions. I'm going to match them. And the first one is toss and turn. I was up all night, tossing and turning. And this is so specific to sleeping, and it means to move constantly at night, where you're in bed and you can't quite find a comfortable position, so you're tossing and turning all night. If I keep having some caffeine, I might be tossing and turning all night. But let's continue now with the second one, which is sleep on it. Maybe somebody asks you a question that you need to think about, and you say, I'm not sure. Let me sleep on it. I'll sleep on it and get back to you in the morning. So to sleep on it is to consider a decision overnight. You consider a decision overnight. You sleep on it. Good. The next one is have a lie-in, and this is very British. Having a lie-in is what you do at the weekend when you have no commitments or obligations and you stay in bed and sleep until later. It is to sleep in, to sleep until late. This weekend, I hope I'll be able to have a lie-in. The next phrase is be wide awake. This is a lovely collocation. If you're wide awake, it means that you are totally awake. You're completely awake. You're not sleepy at all. I could say that last night I was watching a scary movie at 9 o'clock, and whilst watching it, I was wide awake. I was focused and I wasn't sleepy at all. Now, a phrasal verb, stay up. To stay up is, well, to stay awake. So if you stay up until very late, well, you don't go to sleep. Last Friday night, I stayed up until almost 2 a.m. So I had quite a late night. I stayed up late. The next one is another phrasal verb. It is nod off. I've already used it. If you nod off, you doze off. You fall asleep. And usually this is used not in bed, but more like when you're having a nap on a sofa or maybe in public transport. You fall asleep. You nod off. You doze off. Then we have catch up on sleep. Let's imagine that last month I didn't sleep for days on end, multiple days in a row. So I was sleep deprived. So then, when I was comfortable and relaxed, I managed to catch up on sleep. So catch up on sleep is to recover the hours of sleep that you haven't had. I need to catch up on sleep because I haven't slept a lot recently. Awesome. Now, not sleep a wink. I didn't sleep a wink last week because I was so worried about my family. If you don't sleep a wink, you don't sleep at all. You have a sleepless night. Then, the final two, we have an expression which is hit the sack. And if you hit the sack or hit the hay, it means you go to bed. I hit the sack or I hit the hay. And finally, go off. This is what happens to your alarm. Your alarm rings. It sounds. This morning, I had a bit of a lie-in. My alarm went off at 8 o'clock instead of 7:30. Oh, amazing. So there we have all of these advanced words, phrases, phrasal verbs, and idioms. Now, let's use them in conversation. But before we get round to that, we're going to complete a gap fill. So I'm going to read the sentence, and I want you to start thinking which word or phrase could go there. The first one. I was so tired during the meeting that I almost started to... I was so tired during the meeting that I almost started to nod off. To nod off, to fall asleep. Number 2. After working night shifts all week, I spent the weekend trying to... After working night shifts all week, I spent the weekend trying to catch up on sleep, to recover those hours that I hadn't been getting. Lovely. Number 3. Even though it was 3 a.m., I was still, thinking about tomorrow's interview. Even though it was 3 a.m., I was still wide awake thinking about tomorrow's interview. I was completely awake. Number 4, my parents usually, late watching TV on Fridays. My parents usually stay up late watching TV on Fridays. To stay up, stay awake, remember. Now, number 5. I couldn't, because the hotel room was too noisy. I couldn't sleep a wink because the hotel room was too noisy. I couldn't sleep at all. Number 6. Let's not make a decision right now. We should, first. Let's not make a decision right now. We should sleep on it first. We should consider it overnight. Number 7. I'm exhausted. I think I'm going to, early tonight. I'm exhausted. I think I'm going to hit the sack early tonight. I'm going to go to bed early tonight. Number 8. The alarm didn't, this morning, so I arrived late for work. The alarm didn't go off this morning, so I arrived late for work. Number 9. Every Sunday, I like to, and stay in bed until about 10. Every Sunday, I like to have a lie-in and stay in bed until about 10. Ooh, lovely. And finally, I was, all night because it was far too hot in my room. I was tossing and turning all night because it was far too hot in my room. Okay, how was that? Did you know, or did all of these expressions and phrases start to make sense, seeing them in context once again? I hope so, because, as you know, one of the keys to language learning is repetition, reviewing things again and again, not only reading them, listening to them, but also using them in conversation. And that's a reminder that if you want to use all of these words and phrases every week in conversation with me and small groups, you can join the British English Immersion Club, where you pay a monthly subscription to access all of my classes, and you get to go through each of these lessons, well, with me and lots of other lovely people. So again, any doubts or questions about joining my group classes, you can send me an Instagram message, or you can send me an email at lewis@englishwithlewis.com. I hope to hear from you soon. But for now, let's use some of these in conversation. So let me share my screen once again. And here we've got different conversation questions for each of these phrases. So let me choose some of them. And let me go with the second one. When was the last time you decided to sleep on it before making an important decision? Well, I take quite a long time to make a decision, and I always weigh up the pros and cons. I think about what I could gain from making one decision and what I could lose from making another decision. So I always sleep on it, but not only for one night, but two, but three, but four. I take a long time to make a decision. And I think it is a good piece of advice to recommend people to always sleep on it before making a final decision. Always consider it overnight. And the more time you have to think about the decision, the better, in my opinion. Next, do you usually have a lie-in on weekends, or do you wake up early? Well, it depends what you class a lie-in to be. Because I think we usually try to have a lie-in at the weekend, so we never set our alarms unless we have specific travel plans or activities. But on a normal weekend, I wouldn't set my alarm at the weekend with the hope of having a lie-in. But then what usually happens is, well, I wake up because I need a wee, maybe, or I wake up because I'm not very comfortable, or because I've heard something, and then I'll check my phone and I'll see the time. And once I've done that, it's very hard to get back to sleep. So again, my fiance might be sleeping like a baby, but I'm already awake and I'm already thinking like, okay, I should probably have a shower, have a coffee, get out and do something. And this is a recent change. Only now, as I'm getting older and approaching my mid-30s, I'm starting to feel like I shouldn't waste my weekends and I shouldn't waste my mornings. So I want to get up, go out, and do things. But still, I always sleep in until later at the weekend compared to the weekday because I'm not a lunatic. I'm not crazy. All right. Next one. Let's go with how often do you stay up later than planned? Well, I'd say during the week, I usually go to bed and hit the sack at the time that I had in mind. Of course, there are always exceptions. Maybe we have a concert that we go to, or maybe we meet up with friends, and then you might have an extra drink. You might stay out a little bit longer than you planned, which means you will stay up later than you planned. But this doesn't happen very often because on Fridays and Saturday nights, I'm quite happy to be flexible and adapt according to my friends because I don't want to be so inflexible where people think that I'm like a robot. So I'd say at the weekend, I usually stay up a little bit later than planned, but it's something that I already know is going to happen. So it doesn't make me feel weird about it. I feel quite relaxed about it. So yeah, that's what I'd say. Now, let's do one more. And let's go with the last one. Has your alarm ever failed to go off in the morning? Has it ever failed to ring in the morning? Yes, it has. And I don't know who was to blame for this. Maybe it was me and I didn't set my alarm. Or maybe there was a power cut and my phone didn't charge at night. But there have been times working at different language academies where I have overslept. I've slept too long. And then I've woken up and I've checked my phone when, for example, I was going to have a class at 8 a.m. and I checked my phone and it's 10 past 8. And that feeling is horrible. I hate it. I can't stand it. When that happens, of course, the first thing I do is send a message or an email to my boss or to the students and apologize as much as possible. And I usually try to come clean and tell the truth and say, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. My alarm didn't go off and I've just woken up. So we need to reschedule the class. And this has happened only a few times, but it's a nightmare. So I actually mentioned this to another student this week. And, well, maybe it was last week. Yeah, it was last week. And I told her that, well, I have a bit of OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, which is that before falling asleep and before going to bed, I'll check my phone maybe 3 or 4 times just to guarantee that my phone is charged, it's connected, and I've set my alarm and it's set for the correct time. Because I can't stand oversleeping and then missing a class. I feel so embarrassed about it. So, yeah, it does happen sometimes, but I try to avoid it at all costs. 100%. Good. All right. I think that's enough for this week's podcast. I don't want to continue going on and on and on. I could tell you about my dreams, my nightmares, my bedtime routine, but we don't need to get into that. I think this covers most of the lesson plan. So, well, I hope you liked this podcast. If so, please leave a like, and I'll be back once again in a few days for another video. So, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!